Welcome to the Beyond the Burst podcast, your weekly deep dive into
the gear that shapes the sounds.
We're your hosts,
Dave Lozon
and Sean Finkler from Lozon Music in Canada. Each week, we'll be looking at the most exciting guitars, pedals, amps, and studio gear that crosses our path. Plus, real talk about the music industry and the stories behind the gear. Whether you're a bedroom shredder, touring pro, or gear nerd, just like us, you're in the right place. You know, when you get copied by someone, sometimes it's a kind of a nice nod, like, hey, you're doing a good job. We think that's a great idea. That idea you came up with, that's a great idea.
We're going to steal it.
We're going to borrow it. We're not stealing it or borrowing it.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to borrow it, but we're going to call it an exclusive that we came up with.
Yeah.
We're going to call it our idea.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? You guys had a great idea, but it's our idea.
I mean, if it works out, you're not getting it back, right? So it's on loan, but if it works out, it's going to be theft. They're going to take it. They're going to keep it. So I guess that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at some of the inspired by copycatting that has happened in the guitar industry.
Firebird X, not copied.
No, that was an original idea.
It was.
It's one of those original ideas that, probably better it went away, truthfully.
Yeah.
Not every original idea is a good idea.
That's for sure.
Right?
Yeah. I've had a lot of bad ideas.
Better to copy something and do it better than the other guy than do something original that's terrible. Would you agree with that?
Really? I don't know. I mean, like inspiration and copying are different things, right? Inspiration, I think, is the thing that keeps the ball moving. Like you see something and then you take something from that without copying the exact same thing.
Right.
And then it becomes part of your thing, and then your thing becomes part of someone else's thing. And that's one thing, but you're not copying someone. Just straight up ripping something. It's not too interesting.
No, it isn't.
But I mean, I guess if it's between like copying someone or coming up with a Firebird X, I guess
you just copy.
Yeah, I guess
at that point you copy. At some point in time, I would say probably the 70s, you start to get Fender copying Gibson and Gibson copying Fender. They're kind of doing versions of each other's guitars. And I wouldn't say it's something that really took off.
They both were probably better off sticking to their own thing. But yeah, those were the two, right? The two OGs, so to speak. But it's interesting because Fender copyrighted their headstock design.
Right.
But they didn't copyright their body shapes. So that left the door open for everyone to copy that Strat style guitar, Tele style guitar. Which is interesting because did that maybe push that shape forward more because it was open, because it could be taken for interpretation? There was more variations on those as opposed to Gibson, who closely guards their copyrights of the body shapes. You wouldn't see as many Gibson inspired guitars as you did Fender ones.
Yeah, so you're saying there's less kind of single cut, less Paul style, because I can think of a bunch of guitars that kind of look like Gibson. So I don't know where the threshold is with being able to copy someone's shape. I understand the headstock and the lawsuits that pertain to that.
Well, Gibson sued PRS, right?
Right.
For making the single cut guitars, which don't look like Gibsons at all to me, right? But that was the argument in court, that the consumer could be confused.
Right.
What kind of consumers are going to be confused by
they know
that?
what they're doing, yeah. I know Gibson has gone after some smaller guys too, like the Montes of the world and the guys who are making kind of Les Paul style replica guitars.
Replicas. They say Gibson on them.
They say Gibson on them, yeah. But they have enough attention to that stuff that they go after guys like that. I mean, they go after a lot of people who are still trying to make a Les Paul style guitar. Well, that says Gibson on it, obviously.
Right.
So I guess I can't really blame them for that.
Yeah. They didn't go after Slash's guy, though, right?
Well, you can't. Don't upset Slash.
Don't.
Is all we have left.
Is the whole savior, the great savior of Gibson. Yeah, but Gibson did do a lot of lawsuits. You know, just when I said confusion in the marketplace, I was reminded of Vox amplifiers.
Right.
Has recently, this is a few years ago. God, it might be 10 years ago now, for all I know,
Right.
because time moves very oddly. But to Two Rock saying they couldn't use the Vox grill cloth because it could be a confusion in the marketplace. They might think a Two Rock is a Vox.
I guess they got to protect whatever's left, right?
I guess,
Is that
but
the idea?
do you think that anyone's going to be like, wow, that Vox sounds really good? It's like that Chinese Vox sure sounds great on the Grammy stage or whatever.
That was the issue, right? It was something to do with someone playing a Two Rock at the Grammys, right?
Well, I think it was like 4 or 5 different people playing Two Rocks
okay.
at the Grammys.
That's
Yeah.
our grill cloth. I mean, you got to hang on to what you got left, right?
I guess so.
So that's on them. So back to the copyright infringement and people copying other people's guitars. You think of all the lawsuit guitars like the 70s, the 80s. Ibanez, a lot of companies overseas making super Strat style guitars. They're making Les Paul copies.
Yeah.
They're making all sorts of basically Fender Gibson guitars,
Right.
which Gibson did retaliate
Yeah.
and won
Yeah.
the right to having that headstock. But we saw a ton of guitars come out of that era, which kind of eventually bled into that super Strat era of the 80s, where you get a rise in a lot of these smaller boutique makers. And thankfully, like you said, that Fender's bodies weren't patented, they weren't copyrighted. So you have guys like Anderson and Tyler and Valley Arts making kind of Strat style guitars and kind of improving on the design, truthfully, pushing the boundaries of those guitars.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying earlier. Because they were able to, is that why we're fortunate to have these brands that did sort of evolve the design,
Right.
The designs of like the Tyler or Anderson or Sur or whatever are like improvements on the original Fender design. Not saying they're better. Well, I would say they're better for me, but still they're design improvements on that vintage instrument.
Right. Yeah. They're doing things that Fender just didn't offer. So things like compound radius, stainless steel frets. I mean, that you see that a lot on a lot of the boutique builds.
Guitars that intonate.
Like better bridges too.
Yeah, like a
better
old
trimmed.
Like a Telly with three barrel brass saddle. The old style. Like they didn't really intonate, but that's kind of maybe one of the quirks of the instrument, because the guys that could really play those guitars had to pull and bend the notes into tune.
Yeah.
But someone like a Tom Anderson or Sur using like intonatable 3 saddle things, so it changed the approach to the instrument.
Well, it's an improvement on the design. I think Fender at some point had tried to do that too. They're like, let's try to, even in like the 80s, they're trying to make a more modern Fender. And I just don't think that those guitars hit properly. I think part of the formula to making that more modern kind of boutique guitar is a difference in quality, right? It's small scale production. Not only does it have different specs, but it's really small, super dialed in guitars. That's part of the formula. You can't just kind of check the boxes and say, okay, here you go. Here's your super Strat, your boutique super Strat. Right.
Well, some companies are trying to check those boxes, right? Like not that Fender can't do it, but the Ultra Lux, for example, not the same thing as a Sur. It's just not. But it's got the same, the same specifications, or similar. It's got the carve and the heel and the inside. It's got stainless steel frets. It's
compound radius too. No?
Yeah. It's kind of going after the Sur directly. And Ibanez did the same thing. They came out with a bunch of guitars that are going after the Sur. So it's kind of interesting to see the bigger manufacturers kind of circle their tail and start copying the smaller guy.
I think they had to, because a lot of the smaller guys, as a collective, probably have taken some of that market share away from Fender, and Gibson even,
Sure.
In the Gibson vein, now this is a small manufacturer still, but Collings Guitars, they're making Gibson-esque guitars.
Yeah, inspired by, right?
Inspired by, but they are dialed in. Every single one of them is a perfect instrument.
Yeah, and that's something where it's definitely not a copy of a Gibson, you know what I mean? There's so many changes to the build and even the shapes and everything. It's like they're definitely inspired by classic Gibson designs, but then refined to this like a level that Gibson just doesn't do.
They make some great guitars. They make some great reissues, some custom shop made to measure stuff. But Collings is get the magnifying glass out, and you're going to see every square inch of that guitar is perfect.
Yeah, like if you're in you're building 1,000 guitars a year, it's much different. I'm sure Gibson's building 1,000 guitars a month. Probably in the custom shop, they're building 1,000 a month. I'm just guessing.
Another company who's been accused of kind of copying some of the legacy vintage designs, PRS. And I know this is a real sticking point for Paul. I've heard him talk about this many times, how he's like, and this has come.
Those guitars are better than anything that ever happened.
Well, there's that too. But this comes back to what you were saying about like, are you copying something or are you inspired by it? I would say PRS is, well, in maybe both cases, they're inspired. And in some cases, maybe a little bit more on the copying side. But he does his own thing on those guitars. You think of like a Custom 24 is kind of like a Les Paul meets a Strat. Right?
Yeah, it's kind of right. I think I'm going to guess that was his idea with designing the guitar, like something right down the middle.
Right.
You've got some like coil switching options to get different sounds out of it, and you're right in the middle feel-wise.
Yeah, because it's a 10-inch radius, so not like Gibson's 12 or Fender's 9.5. And their scale length is 25 inches. Yeah. So 25 inches is kind of, again, splitting the difference. So I think you can say he was inspired by both those companies, but he's done his own tweak.
For sure. But a guitar like the Silver Sky or something like that.
That's a little different.
That's a little different because John Mayer didn't want to deal with Fender anymore, right? So they built him a Strat. It's a Strat.
Yeah, it is. It's like, I think it's based on like a 62, 63 Strat, right? Is that the idea, right?
I guess the 3-3 is going to be a little different somehow, but really that guitar evokes Stratocaster.
Yeah, it definitely feels like
it's not anything else.
Yeah, I think for the price too that those Silver Skies go for, I mean, they're a little bit more expensive than maybe a US Strat, or not far off, truthfully. I think the quality of what they're doing is still like very high. It's almost like a custom shop level guitar. So, tip your hat to Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Gentle tip. But so just staying on PRS for a minute here, we already talked about how Gibson sued them and they lost in the end, or they quit. It was I don't remember what happened with that lawsuit.
I think Gibson lost. I don't know the exact the details, but again, I think there was a decision. I believe there was a decision, if I recall correctly, and that the judge agreed that that someone would not be not mistake it for the other thing in a store shopping.
Right.
know?
And then 2 weeks later, a single cut showed up at his house. Next thing, he's playing a private stock guitar, right? But and right now, so PRS right now is doing that Herman Lee guitar, which is a really cool, really unique guitar, 2 Fishman pickups.
Oh, wasn't that cool? That was such a cool guitar to see.
One of the coolest, I would say.
Yeah.
And I think that's inspired by an Ibanez guitar. I think he's kind of an Ibanez guy, so I like to see, though, that PRS took some inspiration from that, and they're trying something new, and it's kind of maybe a little outside what they normally do, but...
Sure, I love that. I love that, doing something different, like just an inspiration from somewhere, trying something different to build a cool guitar. I mean, I'd love to see more guitars from them in that body shape.
Me too. I like guitars that are a little bit disruptive. Like, I would say the Powers Electric is that too.
Yeah.
Right? It's something that, like, we're going along for so long, just like a straight line. Everything seems to be a regurgitation of the last idea. And then all of a sudden something comes along and it's so different that it breaks that mold and it kind of opens up a new door. And I think that's the fun thing about this industry is sometimes you see those doors open and it's like, hey, this is a new idea, this is a new direction, and people can pick up on it and do their own variation on that, right? So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that is when we're in the industry and we're here all the time, right? So when new things do come around, it is really exciting.
Yeah.
Again, it's all kind of about inspiration. Some of this new stuff can give you that inspired feeling again, and you just like get more excited about the gear.
And that Herman Lee, and that guitar is so cool. Like, it's a very thin body, and what they've done with the maple cap, and I think it's a mahogany back as well. It's mahogany body with maple cap. The way the jack is, they kind of contour around the jack on the top and the back. That's all carved.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's like a wild appointment.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it was only here for, a day or something.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was pre-sold, but love to see PRS do more stuff like that. In kind of contrast to PRS, we do a lot of Gibson made-to-measure guitars. So we'll go down to Gibson, pick out quilt, pick out figured maple, and sometimes we'll get kind of wilder finishes on them. Fade or a pink top or all sorts of stuff. We've done some pretty wild stuff.
We have done some wild stuff,
and we've heard this online when we post these guitars. Oh, Gibson's just doing the PRS thing.
Yeah, they go, oh, Gibson's trying to be PRS. Did PRS invent the quilted maple? I don't think so. But it's funny. I mean, these are just guitars that we're designing for our store.
Yeah, they're not trying to be anything. They're just trying to fill an order.
Yeah, they're just doing what we asked them to.
But when they get that right, it is as impressive as like a figured top or a quilted top PRS.
Yeah.
PRS always gets it right for the most part. In the finish department, in the maple, figured maple department, they're very, very, very consistently good.
Yes. Yeah, they are.
So
you're saying it's more special when it's an inconsistent...
I would say it's much more special when it's not the average expectation.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, good to see Gibson do stuff like that, and it's good when they turn out great. It's we're always really happy. I'm also thinking of Taylor's newest release. So Taylor recently came out with the 717 and a few variations on that. And it seems like Taylor is really going after kind of the Gibson thing now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting that they're not going after Martin. I mean, Taylor did make dreadnoughts for a long time, but they didn't sound anything like Martin guitars.
They're square shoulder too.
Their dreadnoughts were, yeah. But they don't make them anymore.
No.
They didn't really sell at a certain point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or it was the 10.
The 10, yeah.
Yeah, the 10s. We went for years and years.
Yeah.
It's 10s. Yeah, it's just like they are going after Gibson a bit now. But it's funny, Martin went after Taylor, right?
Right.
Like when Taylor came on the scene, I think that Taylor was really, really hot for quite a long time. For sure. Martin, I think, kind of knocked them back on their heels a little bit,
right,
in terms of sales. So then they started coming out with the Grand Performance Series. Is that what it's called? GPC.
Yeah.
Those guitars all in like basically an 814.
And they were bolt-on neck too. And that was those guitars were really popular for a while.
There was a good run.
Yeah, bolt-on neck, and really it did look like a Grand Auditorium guitar. So
didn't they have a pickguard on one point that was like a little like, wow.
They were kind of pushing it.
It's pushing it like a little. Yeah, it's a little too close.
They got a little too close. But those guitars certainly sold really well for a period of time. But I think at the end of the day, people come back to Martin for Martin. They want the D18, the D28. But they also did that, which is a totally new thing, going outside their lane, was that, is it the SC body, which was kind of that offset guitar.
Right, an offset acoustic.
There's a disruptive thing in the world of acoustic guitars,
Yeah.
And is a micro tilting neck, and is a kind of a unique shim system, I think, too.
That's still it's a model that's out there, right?
Yeah.
Still not. I think we've got one here, but it's maybe not as. It's kind of a fringe thing.
Yeah, definitely. So back to Taylor doing the Gibson thing. They put LR Baggs pickups in these guitars too. So it's definitely kind of, you feel like there's a bit of a nod to J45.
Oh, for sure.
They're going after a warmer sound because traditionally Taylors are brighter and they're fairly clear. And not everyone is looking for that. So they're trying to accommodate more players, I think, with that.
Sure. Do you think that guitar really sounds like a J45 though?
It doesn't. Well, the one that we have though too is rosewood. Rosewood back inside. So perhaps maybe the mahogany version sounds more like a J45. But I think the Taylor DNA is so baked into every build that they do.
Yeah. I think that's true with all these guitars, right?
Yeah.
Like the Martin, even if they're going after Taylor, it still sounds like a Martin. Gibson sounds like a Gibson.
Yeah. Like the modern deluxe that Martin is doing definitely has more clarity, more top end than you traditionally think of as a Martin.
Sure.
But still, it's not in the Taylor realm.
No, it's not. But you know what realm it is in? It's in the Collings realm.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which is another interesting, interesting that maybe that they're feeling, some of that heat from Collings.
Right.
Like I don't know.
It's still pretty small, though, I think.
Collings?
Numbers-wise, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of people would you play a D2H, Collings D2H against a D28. That's like, and it would sound a lot, you get a lot more brightness from the Collings, but it still has all that bottom end
more
that a Martin has.
Too,
so it would, there was a while there that all the Dreadnought guys were really preferring the Collings, it seemed.
Mm-hmm. On to some of the kind of more contentious things that have happened alongside copying other people's designs or their ideas. Not always a well-received thing. Sometimes you copy another guitar company, especially a small company. You copy their design or their idea or their finish, whatever it is. And that, that can potentially affect someone's smaller boutique brand. I'm thinking of the James Tyler versus Sir conflict at one point over the schmear and the drip finishes.
Yes. Great battle in the gear page in 99 or whatever it was, 2000.
John likes to be on the gear page, doesn't he?
I guess so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't been on the gear page in years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think as Rich explained to us, like he said, these guys kind of thought that they were fighting for the same customer. Like
the same 5 guys or same 3 guys, he said.
Same 3 guys. Like they wouldn't buy both guitars. Turns out there's enough people out there for all the makers.
Now especially.
Now, that being said, James Tyler's schmear thing, that's the signature. That's the signature.
It's a big part of the DNA of those guitars.
The headstock and the schmear. That's that's the James Tyler.
Yeah. But Sir's drip is a different thing in my mind. Like it's a totally different aesthetic. I'm sure the process is different because the schmear finish has it almost looks like there's a fan blowing on it. So there's something they do to give it this kind of totally different aesthetic. It's not like the traditional hydro dipping formula, which I think is what Sir does.
Right. Man, I'm just thinking about the schmear. They're the coolest finishes. But there were some, I think Jim was upset with John about that drip, and that was the beef.
It was too close.
Yeah.
Too close. Always interesting to look at some of the inspired by or direct copies of other gear. We see a lot of this in this industry, and whether it's a direct copy like we'd see in Hall E or just a bit of inspiration like maybe we'd see on a Paul Reed Smith. It's always interesting to see new takes on classic designs.
Everything moves forward.
And thanks for listening today. If you like this podcast, please like and subscribe to hear more from us.